I'm going to roll the dice.
Okay.
Because, so we've got 5 lines, five callers waiting. Technically, we have like 2 minutes left in the show. But Andre here in Allentown, the screening thing, you're going to have to turn off your stream.
Oh, okay. Hold on. It is turned off.
Okay, well...
What do you got for us?
We're hearing
Well,
ourselves.
I just have a proof of God. It consists of 10 premises.
Oh, boy.
But the brief.
So are you willing that when we find the first flaw to concede that your argument is flawed?
Well, okay. Actually, I named this after myself because I just came up with it.
Well, if we were to demonstrate a flaw in your argument, would you stop believing?
Well, no.
Then what's the point of going through it?
Just one flaw? Well, if there's one flaw...
One flaw kills an argument. How can you possibly put together an argument with 10 premises and not understand that a single flaw kills the argument?
Well, I guess it would. Okay, I'll concede to that.
All right, so what's the first premise?
Sure. I agree, it would.
What's the first premise? Because we're really short on time. But so give us the first premise and then we'll see.
By the way, this is online. It's God's story. Well, forget it. It's called, the first premise is this. The smallest piece of matter would have at least 2 properties, a front and behind, or at least an internal and external. Even if everything was one sheet of mass, it would necessarily be multidimensional with an equally inaccessible outer or inner core.
That's the first premise?
Yes.
The first.
Yeah,
I think that's flawed.
How could it be? If there's
Yay!
only one element, say there's one element, like energy.
Okay.
Energy also has 2 components. One would be potential energy, and then when it's activated, then it's kinetic energy.
Okay.
Likewise,
Okay.
has
So premise 1 is.
Bosons and fermions.
So premise 1 is, if we reduce X to the smallest possible X, it still has more than one dimension.
Yeah, there's always going to be 2 properties, or at least 2 properties. There's always going to be a duality, no matter how what thing you look at. There's going to be.
I'm not necessarily convinced that that's true, but let's just assume it is. Go on to premise 2.
Okay, premise 2. If a thing didn't have dimensions, then it would be abstract. Even a one-dimensional thing would be abstract, as conceiving it would be counterintuitive and directly unobservable without any background surface.
Well, I would say that the one-dimensional things can't be said to exist. The abstract can't be said to exist.
So the third premise is so relativity exists. Either a thing is physical or abstract, or it's a physicality with 2 properties at least. So the fifth premise is thus oppositions exist and are as universal as energy matter.
Oh boy, I'm pretty
lost. So there's always going to be an opposition. Whenever there's something that's physical, there's going to be some kind of property or opposition to it.
Premise 1, every argument is either going to be good or bad.
But, what that's an abstract.
I'm sorry.
An argument would be abstract. So
you lost me at relativity.
And
because relativity is a sort of a scientific thought process, right?
It's an abstract concept. It's not something that exists.
Right.
But the next premise kind of leads into what you're.
Okay, go ahead and finish it up with all your whole argument.
Okay.
And then at worst, I'll just think about it as we eat dinner.
So the next thing is, so everything that is then has and is not. And the next premise, but in physical reality,
I don't know.
Cosmologists claim that voids don't exist. Like even a void would be a low energy space.
I don't know how you can say everything that is has and is not.
Well, everything conceivable would have and is not. There's always going to be, and like even in relativity, one thing would be, whereas the other one wouldn't be.
So you're conflating existence with concepts and abstract concepts. But go ahead, finish it.
Okay. Well, thus the is not would only exist as the abstraction of the physical is. Abstractions are physical, including relations such as oppositions. They're mutually exclusive as per the logic of non-contradiction. Rather, we conceive them into existence. They exist in thought. Thought exists in brains. So if there are abstract thoughts throughout the universe, then the universe must be a brain itself.
Sounds like our first caller.
Whenever a mind is universalized, it must be accountable for all things meaningful, all knowing, all good, and all powerful, which equates to God. Thus, that would be the opposite of opposition itself, the middle term in relation to all other contraries. And that's it. That's the conclusion.
Needs work.
We're at, though.
Can you demonstrate an abstract concept without a brain to understand it?
Well, that's the default position, because when you think that's an abstract concept, you can't doubt your own abstract thoughts, because that would be an abstraction itself. So you can't really doubt abstract concepts.
Well, you had a premise there, or a conclusion, or just a bald-ass assertion that the universe is necessarily a construct, a brain, a mind.
Well, there's always that's how it kind of leads up to that, because thoughts exist throughout the universe. Abstractions exist throughout the universe, and
thoughts don't exist. Thoughts don't exist. Thoughts, and Andre, yes, thoughts occur in the universe. I won't say that thoughts exist, because now we're conflating things, but they don't exist everywhere in the universe. There are no thoughts in my pants, for example.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. Abstractions exist throughout the universe, and
there are no abstractions in my pants.
In your pants, there might be an abstraction.
How do you know?
Isn't that, that's what I was trying to get at.
Doesn't an abstraction require a mind?
Yes.
Is there a mind in my pants?
That's what I was getting at. Well, if the whole universe is a brain, then...
No, you don't get to say if the whole universe is a brain. We're talking about whether or not that can be a conclusion. Is there a brain in my pants?
Well, the brain would be universal. The whole universe would be
You don't get to
little Matt, maybe?
You don't get to... We're done. You don't get to assume that. If my objection is, how did you determine that the whole universe is a brain? You don't get to say, if the whole universe is a brain, then there's a brain in your pants. When I'm trying to demonstrate reductio ad absurdum, go look at the fuck up, that you haven't actually demonstrated that. There's no brain in my pants, no matter how many times somebody tells me I'm thinking with my penis. It's just not true. It's not a real thing. So you've got this convoluted 10-point argument that begins with definitions of opposites, and everything must have an opposite, which doesn't tell you whether or not the opposite must exist, that then delves into relativity and quantum mechanics, and then argues that the universe is, why not just argue it's a simulation? That seems to be really popular right now, and that, by the way, also can't be demonstrated. But meanwhile, if your claim is that thoughts occur everywhere, and I demonstrate a place where thoughts do not occur, your argument is flawed and done with. Doesn't mean you're wrong, doesn't mean that there isn't a God, doesn't even mean that the universe isn't a brain, it just means your argument is crap.